The words echoed louder than the clinking glasses at the upscale bistro, silencing the laughter and pausing the applause meant for my daughter's graduation. Elias stood with his champagne still raised, his voice slicing through the celebration like a blade through silk. The toast he was meant to give for our daughter's success had been hijacked by his sudden, shameless declaration. 50 guests fell into stunned silence. My name is Mara Linwood. I'm 54. And in that frozen moment, I did not cry. I did not storm out. I did not beg for answers. I simply smiled and said, "Thank you for your honesty." For nearly 3 decades, I had played the perfect role: supportive wife, selfless mother, quiet backbone. I gave up my career in financial planning to support Elias through 3 career reinventions, 2 failed startups, and a series of midlife crises disguised as dreams. I raised our daughter, Claire, who now sat beside me in her graduation robe, mouth slightly open, eyes wide in horror. Behind her, tucked into the corner of the room like a shadow, sat Naomi Trent, Elias's 37-year-old assistant-turned-girlfriend, the same Naomi who once called me for advice, who laughed at our family dinners, who toasted my birthday 2 years ago with a glass of my favorite wine, and the same Naomi who now looked anywhere but in my direction. With calm precision, I pulled a sealed ivory envelope from my clutch and placed it beside Elias's plate. He blinked, caught off guard. "What's this?" "Something for you to read later," I replied softly. I turned to Claire and kissed her cheek. "This day is still yours. I am so proud of you." Then I stood, smoothed my navy silk dress, and with poise, I faced our guests. "Please enjoy your meal. I wish you all a lovely afternoon." I walked out, leaving 50 stunned people behind, and Elias frozen in the wreckage of his own performance. Outside, the summer heat of East Haven wrapped around me like freedom. The heavy oak door swung closed behind me, cutting off the anxious murmurs. The heat of the late East Haven afternoon clung to me like steam, but I welcomed it. It was honest. No pretense, no performance, just warmth and weight, both of which I could finally carry on my own terms. Then came the sound I knew would follow. The restaurant door slammed open behind me. "Mara!" Elias's voice, once confident and smooth, now cracked and frantic. "What the hell is this? What have you done?" I didn't turn around. My heels clicked steadily on the cobblestone walk as I reached my car. I allowed myself the smallest of smiles. The envelope I'd handed him, quiet, cream-colored, harmless on the outside, held everything he didn't see coming: a copy of the divorce petition, a ledger of every financial transfer he thought I wouldn't notice, bank statements, photos, and a printed excerpt of the prenuptial agreement he'd insisted on nearly 3 decades ago, the very clause that would become his undoing. Elias always underestimated me. He thought he was clever, siphoning money into a hidden account. He thought he could keep Naomi's secret, that her name wouldn't appear on receipts, that I wouldn't recognize the beachfront listings showing up on our shared iPad. He thought I would never notice, but I had been noticing for a year. The missing funds, the fake consulting expenses, the dinners that didn't line up with his calendar. I didn't just see it, I tracked it. Quietly, meticulously. While he whispered to Naomi about freedom and fresh starts, I built my case like a seasoned strategist, piece by piece, preparing not just for confrontation, but for liberation. I didn't stop walking. Elias's footsteps grew closer behind me, his breath catching. "We need to talk. You can't just..." I turned, finally meeting his eyes. "No, Elias, I can." I got into my car, shut the door gently, and drove home. Not our home, as he'd promised Naomi in his texts, but mine. Because as of this moment, Elias Linwood was no longer part of the foundation I stood on. He was merely part of the rubble I was stepping over. The colonial house on Willow Lane looked unchanged as I pulled into the drive. Brick walls kissed by ivy, blue shutters open to the summer sun. The hydrangeas I had planted last spring were in full bloom, but everything behind those walls was different now. This place, once a shared life, had become a stage for lies. I entered through the front door with the same key I had used for 15 years. The scent of cedarwood and citrus cleaner greeted me, familiar, comforting. Yet my fingers hesitated on the doorknob a second longer than usual, acknowledging a truth I could no longer ignore. This was no longer our home. It was the shell of what once was, and what he had quietly walked away from, long before I did. I moved through the rooms slowly, not like an intruder, but like someone reclaiming something stolen. There were still family photos lining the staircase. Claire's first recital, our anniversary trip to Venice, one of Elias holding Claire on his shoulders in the park. I studied his smile in that photo. So wide, so sure, and I wondered for the 1000th time, when did it become a mask? Upstairs, in the master bedroom, I opened the closet. There, in the far corner, were 2 pre-packed suitcases, his shirts folded with care, belts coiled, shoes lined up neatly. He was planning to leave tomorrow. His clean break, his new chapter. He even packed cologne. How quaint. I closed the closet gently, not with anger, but with finality. He had always been precise with his appearance, yet careless with his commitments. Calculated about his wardrobe, reckless about his word. Downstairs, my phone buzzed again. Dozens of messages. Most I ignored. But one name made me pause. Claire. Her message was short. "Are you okay?" I replied immediately. "I'm fine, baby. Today is still yours. Celebrate with your friends. We'll talk tonight. I love you." I had protected her from the truth for months, waiting for her to cross the finish line of her degree without stumbling over the wreckage of our home life. She deserved that. Now it was my turn. To face it all. To rebuild. To become something more than what I had been forced to settle for. It was just past 6 when I heard the tires crunch in the driveway. I didn't rise. I stayed seated on the living room sofa, the soft glow of my laptop illuminating the neatly organized documents I had spent months compiling. I was ready. Every account, every withdrawal, every lie, categorized, time-stamped, and sealed in facts. The front door burst open. "Mara!" Elias's voice filled the house, rougher this time, tinged with fury rather than shock. I didn't flinch. I closed the laptop calmly and looked up as he entered the room, envelope clutched in one hand like it had burned him. His face was red, his breath shallow. The tremor in his fingers betrayed the unraveling of a man who had always believed himself in control. "What the hell is this?" he barked, waving the divorce papers. "You read it," I said softly. "So you already know." "You served me today." "On Claire's graduation," he hissed. "You had no right to do this." I met his anger with silence, then evenly. "Just as you had the right to choose Naomi. We all make choices, Elias. This was mine." He scoffed and dropped into the armchair opposite me, running a hand through his graying hair. "The prenup doesn't hold anymore. It's been decades. It's expired." I tilted my head. "Has it?" A pause. Then I pulled out a second copy, highlighted, annotated. Section 14. Fidelity clause remains binding for the full duration of the marriage, regardless of time elapsed. He blanched. His mouth opened but no words came out. "You drafted this agreement, Elias," I added, "to protect your business assets, remember? But it works both ways." "You're bluffing," he spat, though even he didn't believe it. I pulled out my phone and tapped a recording. A familiar voice filled the room. His. "After the graduation, I'll tell her. In public, so she won't react. She'll be blindsided. Cassandra says she'll feel bad, but it's cleaner this way." Then Naomi's voice whispering, "And she doesn't know about the money." Elias again. "Not a clue. Mara trusts me too much. That's her blind spot." The silence that followed was suffocating. "You recorded me," he whispered. "In our home, with me in the room. One-party consent, Elias. Perfectly legal." He stood abruptly, pacing. "I need to make some calls." "To your lawyer?" I said, rising. "Good idea. I'd start there. I'm staying at Naomi's tonight. Number. You're not." He stopped cold. "I already spoke to the leasing office," I said gently. "That lease application never went through. It was flagged for credit issues. The agent called the home line." I answered. His mouth opened, then closed again. You might want to call Naomi, I added, stepping past him. She's probably waiting in an apartment that doesn't exist. I picked up my purse and the overnight bag I had packed earlier. You have until tomorrow evening to remove your things. After that, the locks change. Mara, he called after me, his voice cracking. I paused at the door. Don't, I said quietly. Don't use Claire as a reason to stall. You weren't thinking about her when you betrayed this family. And with that, I left him standing in the wreckage, his new life unraveling, thread by thread. The moment I stepped onto the porch of Diana's cottage, she opened the door with a look that said everything: fury, concern, and fierce loyalty all at once. Mara, she said, pulling me into a hug that was more like a shield. I just heard from Claire. Are you all right? I nodded, my throat tight. I'm better than I should be. She stepped back, eyes scanning my face. You did what you had to do. Come in. Diana's home was smaller, cozier, lined with bookshelves and soft lamplight. It smelled of lavender and black tea. She had always lived simply, by choice. A literature professor at the local university, Diana had never married, never settled for anything less than full autonomy. In the kitchen, a bottle of wine waited uncorked. She handed me a glass without a word and sat across the table. I never thought Elias would humiliate you in front of everyone, she said quietly. That public scene? He's lost his mind. It was a power play, I replied, taking a sip. He wanted to control the narrative, but I came prepared. Her eyes sharpened. What was in the envelope? Everything, I said. Divorce papers, the prenup clause, records of the fund transfers, photos, the timeline. She gave a low whistle. You always were 5 steps ahead. I had to be, I murmured. He counted on me to be the stable one, the forgiving one. And he mistook your quiet for weakness, she said. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang. Diana rose to answer, then returned moments later with a trembling voice. It's Claire. I stood as my daughter came into view, still in her graduation dress, makeup streaked from tears. Her eyes met mine, filled with questions, heartbreak, and something else, understanding. Why didn't you tell me, she asked, her voice breaking as she stepped into my arms. I didn't want to ruin your moment, I whispered. You worked so hard. She clung to me like she had when she was 5, hiding from thunderstorms under my coat. Well, Dad ruined it anyway, she said softly, so you might as well tell me the truth now. We moved to the sunroom, 3 women in a circle of books, plants, and truth. And as the story came out, every detail, every betrayal, Claire listened without flinching. I knew something was off, she admitted. He was always on his phone, always distracted. But I thought, maybe I was imagining it. No, Diana said gently. You just didn't want to see the cracks. Claire turned to me. What happens now? I glanced at my phone, where a message from my attorney, Philip, blinked. Emergency filing approved. Accounts frozen pending proceedings. I showed her the screen. He can't access the money, she asked. No, I said. Not anymore. She exhaled slowly. Good. Then without warning, she stood and hugged me again. I'm proud of you, Mom. And for the first time since the restaurant, I felt proud of myself too. We were just settling into a rare moment of quiet when the doorbell rang again. Diana paused mid-sentence, her face shifting from gentle to guarded. She stood, crossing the hardwood floor with slow measured steps. A few moments later, she returned with her jaw tight and her voice low. It's Elias. And Naomi. I stood. Claire stood with me. Naomi was right behind him, her posture tight, her eyes scanning the room like it was unfamiliar territory. She looked uncomfortable, like a woman who knew she had walked into a battle she was never prepared to fight. Elias didn't hesitate. He strode forward with that same air of entitlement I had once mistaken for confidence. Mara, he said, his voice low, urgent. We need to talk. You have to stop this. Diana stepped beside me, arms crossed. Or what? This is irrational, he snapped, ignoring his sister. Freezing the accounts? Blindsiding me in court? Claire moved to stand just slightly in front of me, protective and trembling with barely contained rage. You mean like you blindsided us during my graduation, she said coldly. Announcing you're leaving Mom in front of 50 people? That wasn't irrational? Elias looked genuinely taken aback, like it hadn't occurred to him that Claire, his own daughter, might not be on his side. This doesn't involve you, Claire, he said quietly. Doesn't involve me, she echoed. You broke apart our family over appetizers and champagne. I think it involves me. Naomi shifted awkwardly behind him. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it. Her usual air of youthful charm had vanished. In its place was something brittle, like glass that had started to crack. Elias turned back to me, lowering his voice. You can't leave me with nothing, Mara. This isn't you. This is cruel. My voice was steady, flat. No, Elias, what I did was deliberate, not cruel. Cruel would have been exposing you in front of our guests. Cruel would have been screaming or retaliating. What I did was as controlled. Naomi finally spoke. I didn't know he was going to say it like that at the celebration. I thought he'd talk to you privately. Elias shot her a glare. The cracks in their unity were showing now, widening by the second. Claire turned to Naomi, her voice shaking. You thought this would end well? That you'd just walk in and take my father, my family, my mother's life, and everything would stay neat? Naomi's face flushed. She looked down. Elias snapped. This is ridiculous. Mara, we've been married for almost 3 decades. That has to count for something. It did, I replied, until you decided it didn't. He shifted tactics. You've always been the logical one, the calm one. Help me make sense of this. I stepped forward. You moved money behind my back, lied to my face, plotted your escape with her, and when I quietly turned the tables, you came here demanding empathy. Elias, I didn't burn down our marriage. I just handed you the match. Diana cleared her throat. This conversation is over. You've said enough. Leave. Elias looked at Claire, desperation flashing. Please, sweetheart. You understand, don't you? Claire's voice was like steel. I understand that you hugged me this morning and told me you were proud of me, while planning to gut our family that same afternoon. You used me as cover. The silence was crushing. Naomi touched Elias's arm again. Greg, we should go. He pulled away, but she was already moving toward the door. As she opened it, she turned to me with a strange mix of apology and bitterness in her eyes. You're stronger than I expected, she murmured. I always have been, I said. He just didn't notice. The door closed behind them, and for the second time that day I felt something shift. The end of something heavy, the beginning of something free. It rained the morning of the preliminary hearing. Not a thunderstorm, just a slow, steady drizzle that painted the courthouse windows in streaks of soft grey. The kind of weather that felt appropriate, quiet, somber, like the final page of a long chapter turning on its own. I arrived early, accompanied by my attorney, Philip Rains, a calm, deliberate man with years of family law behind him and a binder thick with every scrap of evidence I had gathered. Elias arrived 15 minutes late. He looked thinner, paler, his usual polished air replaced by something less composed. The suit he wore hung awkwardly at the shoulders, and the young associate trailing behind him looked like he'd only just passed the bar. Naomi was nowhere to be seen. I met Elias's eyes for a brief moment in the corridor outside the courtroom. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came. I simply looked away. When we entered the courtroom, the judge, a woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled into a low bun and a reputation for no-nonsense rulings, was already reviewing the prenuptial agreement. This document appears thorough, she said, adjusting her glasses. Miss Linwood, do you still assert its full enforcement? I do, Your Honor, I replied, voice steady. Elias's lawyer stood, clearing his throat. Your Honor, we believe the agreement has aged out of enforceability due to the long duration of the marriage, nearly 29 years. The judge lifted one eyebrow. Section 18 of this document, she said, flipping pages, clearly states that the agreement remains in effect for the full term of the marriage, including legal proceedings following dissolution. No expiration clause is present. Are you prepared to contest this language? The young attorney looked visibly flustered. No, Your Honor. Very well, she said briskly, then turned to the evidence packet Philip had submitted. We have documentation of financial deception, systematic transfer of marital funds, evidence of extramarital involvement. Elias shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The judge's voice remained measured. Given the fidelity clause within this agreement and the substantiated breach of said clause, I am ruling in favor of the enforcement of full protections as outlined in the contract. She looked at Elias. This includes the family residence, the retirement assets contributed jointly, and all frozen joint accounts, pending further discovery. Elias's jaw clenched. His attorney mumbled, "Understood." Mr. Linwood's personal account will remain accessible for limited living expenses, the judge continued. All property transactions and withdrawals beyond necessity are prohibited. And just like that, it was done. My home remained mine. My savings secured. The investments I had worked for, preserved. As we stood to leave, Elias caught up to me in the hallway. "Mara," he said softly, "please. We need to talk about this. 28 years. That has to mean something." I paused. "It did," I said, "until you treated it like it didn't." He looked tired, older than I remembered. His voice cracked as he whispered, "I made a mistake." "No," I replied. "A mistake is something you regret. What you did was planned, rehearsed, funded." He had no reply. I walked past him slowly, my heels echoing down the marble hallway. For once, I didn't look back. The days that followed the hearing unfolded with quiet clarity. Word spread through our social circle faster than I could have imagined. Some friends called with genuine support, others with thinly veiled curiosity, fishing for gossip wrapped in sympathy. I offered the same line to all of them. "Elias and I are separating. These things happen." Behind that simple sentence, an empire of truth stood, calm, measured, and no longer ashamed. What Elias hadn't expected was how quickly his facade would begin to crack. Without access to our joint funds, the beachfront property deal fell through. The luxury car he'd put a deposit on was cancelled. The business he'd been quietly struggling to keep afloat, propped up by my planning, my spreadsheets, my long nights, began to wobble. Cassandra moved out within 2 weeks. Diana called me one evening, amusement in her voice. "She left," she said simply. "Told her friend she didn't sign up for a man with debt and no direction." I chuckled. I wasn't surprised. Elias had always been a magician at projecting success, but without the mirrors and smoke I'd carefully set up for years. The illusion couldn't hold. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding. I took a small office above a bookstore downtown and registered my new business, Linwood Financial Transitions. I specialized in helping women, especially those navigating divorce, widowhood, or financial betrayal, understand their money and reclaim their autonomy. My first 2 clients came through Diana. Word spread, and within 3 months, I had a growing waitlist of women who, like me, had once believed devotion meant sacrifice. One afternoon, Claire called from Charleston, where she had just started her new marketing role. "You're helping people, Mom," she said. "You're making a difference. I'm so proud of you." "I'm just doing what I wish someone had done for me," I replied, helping women prepare for whatever comes next. That weekend, Claire visited. We sat in the kitchen drinking tea when she looked at me and asked, "Do you think he'll ever admit how badly he messed up?" I thought for a moment. "Maybe," I said. "But it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is, we're okay." She nodded. Better than okay. And I realized she was right, because I was no longer just someone's wife, no longer the silent backbone of someone else's story. I was the author now. It fell on a quiet Thursday, a date I'd once circled in red on our family calendar every year, our wedding anniversary. 29 years to the day since I said, "I do." Now I was about to say the final, "I don't." The courtroom was smaller than I expected, humble, quiet. The rain had stopped, but the skies stayed grey, as if even nature understood that something long overdue was ending. Elias sat across the room, his posture slumped, his suit wrinkled. There was no Naomi beside him. No one at all, in fact. Just his tired attorney, looking more like a public defender than a seasoned litigator. My side looked different too. Philip stood beside me, prepared, steady, calm as always. Behind me, Diana sat, arms crossed in quiet support. And next to her, Claire. She wore no anger today, just quiet strength. She was watching, seeing the final consequences play out in real time. The judge reviewed the final financial disclosures, the prenuptial agreement, and the court's earlier rulings. After reviewing the documented infidelity, the financial misconduct, and the agreed-upon terms, she began, the court rules in favor of full enforcement of the prenuptial contract. I closed my eyes briefly, not in relief, but in peace. Ms. Linwood retains the family residence, all retirement accounts under her name, and 70% of joint investments. Mr. Linwood will retain his personal savings and business holdings. Claire didn't look at her father, and Elias didn't look at me. The gavel struck like a punctuation mark, simple, final, unceremonious. It was over. Outside, as we stepped onto the courthouse steps, Elias approached slowly. His voice, once so confident, was now barely audible. "Mara," he said, "I know I don't deserve it, but I just need to say, I made a terrible mistake." I looked at him for a long moment. "Elias, I believe you," I said quietly, "but belief doesn't change the past." He swallowed hard. "Is there any chance?" "No," I interrupted gently. "That door is closed." A pause. Then he nodded. "You deserve to be happy," he said, voice shaking. "I know," I said, "and I will be." He stood there, hands in his pockets, watching as Claire and I walked away. For the first time in decades, I felt truly untethered, not lost, just free. The woman who had once been just a supporting character in someone else's narrative had now stepped fully into the lead. And I wasn't going back. 6 months later, I stood in the doorway of my new office. Glass walls, natural light, and my name stenciled cleanly across the door. Mara Linwood, Financial Transitions and Advisory for Women. What started as a quiet dream buried under years of sacrifice had become something solid, steady, mine. I'd hired 2 associates, smart, passionate women, both survivors of their own financial storms. We built something together. Not just a business, but a haven for women stepping into the unknown. Women who had been lied to, underestimated, or left behind. My clients came by word of mouth. Lawyers, teachers, newly single mothers, women who once felt powerless now sat across from me, learning to read bank statements like battle plans. We didn't just talk numbers, we talked freedom, and every time I locked the office door at night, I didn't feel tired. I felt whole. Claire visited often. She loved her new job in Charleston, but always made time to check in. One afternoon, as we walked through the neighborhood farmers market, she said something that stayed with me. "You know what's ironic?" she said, gently tucking a flower into my tote. "If Dad had just told the truth from the beginning, he probably could have kept half of everything." I smiled softly. "Sometimes people can't see past the moment they're chasing," I said, "even if it costs them everything lasting." She nodded, then squeezed my hand. "You found something better." And she was right. I no longer measured my worth in what I gave up for others. I had a name on a door, a calendar full of women counting on me, a life that fit my soul like it had been custom-made. The envelope I handed Elias that day, it wasn't just the start of a legal case. It was a key, one I didn't even know I was holding. Behind that sealed flap was the doorway to a woman I'd forgotten, but never truly lost. And once I walked through it, I never looked back.